magic makers, and welcome back to the Metaphysical Apothecary. We are your hosts, Shannon and Megan.
Hi, everyone.
Also known as the Scorpio Sisters, here to explore the mysterious, the magical, and the arcane.
Today's topic is anti-pantheons. In pop pantheons, there's usually the idea that we're going to use these characters, these historical figures, to channel their energy to affect something positive in our lives. And usually we're thinking about the hero of the story, Hercules, Mickey Mouse, Rapunzel, Spider-Man, the people who in the end are the ones who usually win. However, we can also use characters that we don't resonate with, or even villains from any of these fandoms, to perform shadow work or to examine sides of ourselves that we're not very comfortable with. Something that has been talked about is how villains are coded. Villains are usually gay coded, often disabled. They may have neurodivergent traits, be disfigured in some way. There are other things I'm sure that I'm missing, where there are people in this world who simply identify with these villains because they see something of themselves in this person. One of my favorites to think about is Scar from The Lion King. Why would you want to channel Scar energy? He committed filicide and was a terrible person. Scar is very gay coded. He's very gay coded. So when you are working with archetypal energy in terms of shadow work or in terms of elevating parts of yourself you're not comfortable with, someone like Scar you could look at and go, I identify with him in a lot of different ways, and sort of strip away the pieces of him that are malicious and examine them. Look at those pieces. How did he end up here? How did he become this villain? Examine them as part of that being's shadow, and then look at the pieces of them that you want to bring into your own energy and emulate. Scar is very self-assured. Yes, he's arrogant, but he's very self-assured. He's secure in who he is. He's debonair. He's charming. He gets what he wants, and he knows how to get what he wants. He's very self-accepting in a lot of ways. Yes, you could argue that he wants the power, but he's very self-accepting. He admits that he's weaker than his brother. He knows who he is. So there are bits of this that you can take and sort of transmute and look at yourself and say, okay, how can I bring this energy into my experience and reflect that out into the world in a beneficial and benevolent way?
I'm going to use any villain energy to try to understand the disruption of standards, I guess, social standards and civilization. It would probably be Megamind.
I love that movie.
He starts out as the villain, has a completely rational reason why he's become the villain. He disrupts civilization and society within Metro City, and then gets bored and goes, okay, I need to rebuild this.
Yeah.
I need to rebuild this in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So I would probably work more with Megaminds for that. Definitely my anti-pantheon, where I feel like I'm repelled by these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But there are energies within them that I recognize as myself trying to not acknowledge my potential to resonate with them. One of the characters that I full on find to be repulsive at first glance is actually from the world of Riddick. They start out as Jack in Pitch Black, and Jack is a ambiguous individual. You don't know if they're a teenage boy or they're a teenage girl. And towards the end of the movie, you realize that Jack is a teenage girl, and she's just come into her first monthly, and the creatures in Pitch Black are attracted to blood. I get annoyed at her because she refuses to acknowledge the fact that she could be putting herself and others in danger just by being herself.
Yeah.
I don't get annoyed that she's being herself. I don't get annoyed that she's masquerading as a teenage boy in order to keep herself safe. All of those things I understand. I understand where she's coming from. I like those parts of her. But the fact that you're a teenage girl and you're just starting to have your monthly period in a situation where the creatures smell and target blood and don't tell anyone that, hey, I'm bleeding.
Yeah.
Annoys me. I've gone back and taken her character apart a bit and realized that within myself, there have been plenty of times where I have not told others, hey, this is what's going on with me that could be somehow in some way affecting you. And while it's not the same danger as Jack's character in Pitch Black, it's still the same energy of my mental state or my emotional state or this particular physical aspect of what we're doing is making me very uncomfortable, and it might be making you have some kind of effect as well that you might not see. And I've tried to work with that Jack energy so that way I can have a better way of communicating to the people around me. I'm just not feeling good today. Today is not a day, and I'm not feeling it.
Today is not a day.
And then in the Chronicles of Riddick, Jack becomes Kira, and Kira is the one that repulses me. She becomes this wild character that's more like a wild cat because she's made so many mistakes in an attempt to find Riddick. I think that the reason why it repulses me so much is because there's something in me that acknowledges I can't have certain people come back in life, even though I want them to. It's not necessarily the people who have passed on, it's the people who I know are still alive, and I still can't have them for my own sanity in my life. And yet here's this character who is pedal to the metal, full throttle ahead into the worst decisions possible to get that person back in life. Currently still working with Kira energy.
Right.
I want to punch her in the face. I have violent tendencies towards this particular character, and there's a lot of shadow work there that has to be done in order to understand what she does, why she does it.
That's a good example of how we don't have to like characters that we place on our pop pantheon, but we can take these energies and we can actually examine why we avoid them, why they repel us, and what that means for us. And sometimes it's a realization like when you had, Shannon, with realizing that you needed to communicate better. And other times it's a realization that there's something about that character that you are capable of that is objectively, morally neutral about a person, but you don't like the character because they reflect that piece of you that you have rejected, either because of the way you were socialized growing up, because of the way society treats you. And that's essentially what shadow work is examining those bits and bats inside of ourselves. So in Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's a character named Katara. And at first glance, Katara seems like she's just a very stereotypical domestic girl. She's about 14. She's definitely the mom of the group. But as time goes along, you start to see that there are facets of her that go far beyond the stereotype of mom and girl. At first, I was a little resentful that Katara was the main waterbender. But as I grew to be an adult and watched the show more often, I started to realize that my resentment of her was actually a shadow in me. She's a healer. I'm a healer. She's also a warrior, a fierce protector. an incredible strategist. She's remarkably practical, incredibly passionate. And these are things that I noticed about her as I worked on my own reintegration and started to recognize that this character is actually a real badass and represents the duality of water very, very well, because water is a source of life and it's a source of destruction. And she embodies that. Working with that energy made me realize that I have the same capabilities inside myself. Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat was one of those characters that I resented a little bit. She's actually quite a strong, well-rounded character if you look at everything that she's capable of doing, not just with her body in martial arts, but also with her mind. She doesn't necessarily need an additional superpower over that. Mm-hmm. She's a complete person the way she is. The character Alice from The Magicians is one for me who I had a hard time getting on board with her. I respected her as a character. She's mousy. She's retreats into herself. She actively hides a lot of her own personal intellect and her own personal ability to make herself more palatable to those around her. She's got a lot of very lost little girl energy, which really just rubbed me the wrong way. And if you look at her backstory, she has every reason to be like this. It's very clear that she is the product of her environment, and her being the way that she is far from her fault. Watching Alice made me realize that there were a lot of things about the way that she acted and the way that she socialized with others and had been socialized that were similar to the way that I acted and had been socialized, and refused to embrace my powers. Alice represented the pieces of myself that wanted to be more cautious, that were afraid of being hurt again. And I needed to pull that apart and examine it and look at it and realize that there's nothing wrong with being like that. There's nothing wrong with having scars or feeling a certain way. Is something that Alice and I both needed to learn.
So one of the fandoms that I absolutely loved as a child was Power Rangers. The only Power Ranger that I looked like in any way, shape, or form was Kimberly, the pink Power Ranger. She caused me a lot of angst because here is this ranger who's supposed to be empowered and be powerful in her own right. And more often than not, she's somehow, some way, the damsel in distress. Power Rangers are supposed to be the saviors fighting against mythical evil. And here is this one ranger who is supposed to be the quintessential cheerleading girl. And she's the most powerless of the Rangers because she's that girl. She's that type of girl. So she has to fit into the damsel in distress model. She finds herself kidnapped a few times or targeted as the weak link. I could see myself in her physically, but it just drove me insane as a child. Why is this ranger the ranger? If this happens to her, why is there a pink ranger?
Yeah.
I'm still working with that energy, to be honest with you. Because it still baffles me on so many fronts. Color yellow is not my color. But yellow and blue ranger are very smart rangers who very rarely get targeted for any reason. And if they do, it's usually blue ranger who gets targeted because he's also considered the geek.
Yep.
It's something I'm still taking back and pulling back and using to understand who she is, what she is, and how to apply her to my life. She's still on my anti-pantheon because I still haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
Mid-late 30s, and I still have not figured out why this particular character in the Power Rangers causes me this much frustration mentally.
Yeah.
What are you reflecting in myself? What do I fear within myself?
Yeah.
So that's all we have on our topic for today. Thank you so much for listening in, and we hope you'll join us again soon. In the meantime, you can follow us for more witchy wisdom, both here and on our blog. And you can also check out our original art on Society 6 for sacred decor and more. Thanks again for joining us. Go make some magic and live your best life.
Bye.